Cashflow Diary podcast, episode 444.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary podcast, and I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you are here today because, you know, one of the interesting things about being in business, building cash flow, going out there to do something is because you usually do these things because you actually want to do something else. You're like, hey, if I built a business, I could then go, run with the bulls, or then I could travel, or then I could do this, or then I could make a difference in these ways. What would happen if you actually made a business out of making things happen for other people that just seemed impossible? You're like, Jay, what are you talking about? What if you wanted to visit the International Space Station? Do you know someone like who could help you with that? Or what about you wanted to trek on a luxury safari in the Amazon and the Serengeti? What if you wanted to go on the legendary sardine run in Southern Africa? Or what if you just wanted a walk-on role in a hit TV show? What if you built a business around doing those things for other people? I'm sure right now you're like, that's not possible. Well, today's guest says it is. His name is none other than Steve Sims. He's the founder and CEO of the Bluefish and the author of the new book, Bluefishing: The Art of Making Things Happen. And you already know I like that title. So, ladies and gentlemen, here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to ask you to put yourself in that mindset of, you know what, the things that I've thought were not possible, here comes a guy who makes them possible. Not only possible, but he increases them to make them probable. And now it's time for you and I to listen, to take notes, to understand, to hear the lessons so that we can duplicate and make our dreams come true as well. Help me welcome Steve Sims. Steve, you there?
I am. That's a hell of a build-up, though. Thank you.
More than visiting the International Space Station, taking a submarine to the Titanic. I mean, come on, dude. It's like, how do I make you sound like, wow, that's insane, some of the stuff that you're out there doing. But I'm glad that you're here. Now, with that being said, this is your first time here. So what I want to do is I want to ask you the same question I ask everybody the first time that they're here. You ready?
Yeah. Go for it.
All right. I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes. Batman, Robin, Wonder Woman, etc. Because I think entrepreneurs and superheroes have a ton of things in common. Chief among them is that as an entrepreneur, occasionally I can imagine myself flying around town, maybe wearing a special outfit, saving my customers and rescuing them in various forms. But also, like a superhero, an entrepreneur has a beginning. So, for example, let's think about Spider-Man. There was a time where all he was trying to do was eat, and he was just going to school, taking some photos, make sure he could eat and pay some bills, that type of thing. And then one day he gets bit by a spider and then discovers, hey, I got this superhuman ability now. And he gets to choose whether to use it for good or evil. So my question to you is as follows. Before your book, Bluefishing: The Art of Making Things Happen, before the company, before being able to create and meet all the celebrities and working with high-end individuals to create experiences for them, what we want to know is, who is Steve Sims?
Wow. Well, that's very easy. I was and am an uneducated East London bricklayer.
Nice.
Yep. Simple as that. No frills.
That might be the simplest answer we've ever gotten. So, okay, but then it does lead itself to a very interesting question. How do you go from bricklayer, okay, to being able to take a luxury safari in the Amazon, or private cooking lessons with the world's finest executive chefs. How does that happen? There's a story there.
Yeah, it happened one day, and it was very vivid to me, and it still is. I was a bricklayer at the age of 15. I left school, worked on my dad's construction firm. I went up a ladder, and on the scaffolding, laying bricks, was my dad, my cousin, my uncles, my nephews, everyone lined up, and I saw my family tree, and my granddad was there as well. I remember seeing my entire future laying bricks. And at the age of I think by this time I was maybe like 17 and 18 and questioning everything like most teenagers do. I was like, is this it? Is this it? And it really hit me in the head. Is this my life? And I remember starting to ask a lot of questions, aggravating a lot of people, because if people are stuck in that life, they kind of don't like it when people try to break out. So there's a lot of naysayers out there. And so I was saying, hey, why didn't you do anything else? They'd be like, I wanted something different. So I went for the polar opposite. I actually went from bricklayer and tried in the 80s to get a job as a stockbroker. And a friend of mine, and it's a funny, stupid story that no one's going to believe, but a friend of mine at school was a stockbroker in London and told me about these internships that they were doing at his local brokerage house. So one day I actually went along and applied for an internship wearing my dad's suit. Now, when I got to the bank, the reason there was internships was because they were sending off a whole bunch of them, established stockbrokers, to Hong Kong. When I turned up at the bank, I actually jumped in that room and pretended as though I was there to listen about it. And I actually sat there eating all of the buffet breakfast, just enjoying this experience of being in a sandpit. And you talk about entrepreneurs. The beautiful thing about entrepreneurs is we get to play in other people's sandpit. We get to try different things. And I think that was one of the first times I realized that I was an entrepreneur, and the fact that I like to go through doors that maybe I shouldn't have gone through, just to see what it looked like on the other side, inquisitive nature. And this is a bit ballsy, but, I'm East London cocky Irish lad at the time thinking I was invincible. I actually walked up. The guy on stage said, and when you get to the back of the room, make sure the girls have got your addresses to send you the welcome and travel pack. I walked back to this girl and I looked at her and I said, hi, Steve Sims. And she looked at her list. Now, bear in mind, I hadn't been in the bank for maybe longer than an hour. And she looked at the list and she went, I'm sorry, I don't see your name. So I stood there and I went, oh, no, not again. I'll take it down now. So she took my name and address down. And believe it or not, they were sending so many people to Hong Kong, they actually sent me my welcome pack, including a ticket. And I took off on the Friday from London, landed on the Saturday because of time zone. I went out drinking with all the new brokers on the Saturday and Sunday, went to orientation on the Monday, and I was fired on the Tuesday.
Yes.
So now I'm stuck in Hong Kong, and ended up getting, I'm a big ugly lad, so I ended up getting a job on the door in Wan Chai, which was the clubby area of Hong Kong. And then I just started mingling with people and thinking, well, all right, I'm out of the bricklaying world now. What's next?
That's for sure.
Yeah, and so I just started throwing some parties and networking, and it just grew from that. People would go, oh, can you do this? And because I had nothing to lose, I'd be like, yeah, it doesn't sound too hard. Let me have a stab at it. I'll try it. And I was just stunned, even at that age, of how people are scared of fear itself. And they will just go, oh, I want to do that. And then immediately, and they do it now. And if people didn't have this thing, I'd be bankrupt. But people come to me and they go, oh, I want to get a guitar lesson by Sting. Oh, but I can't do that. And they will suddenly go off on how they can't do things. And as Greg Reed says, it's the size of your butt that stops you going forward. But I can't do this, but I don't have the money. And these people will tell you the dream and then immediately tell you why it can't happen. And I look at it and I go, well, why can't it? You're spending so much energy on thinking up reasons that it can't happen, rather than thinking of reasons that it has to happen. And it just bewildered me. And I think my biggest luck was how uneducated I was as a child, that I didn't have the foresight, or I didn't have that fear at that time. And of course, as I've got older, I've realized that, it is fear itself. And I now class myself as educated because I travel and get to do so much. But I'm sure as hell things at school and schooling had nothing to do with my education.
Totally understood and agreed with you there. What I'm finding interesting, though, is that your perspective on concepts like fear, for example, are definitely something I think everybody's going to be able to relate to, because there's a number of us who will say things like you're talking about. Hey, we might, do it in revenue terms. I just want to start a business. I just don't want to be, at this job any longer. I just don't want to do this, but I can't go earn $1 million. I can't do 2 million. I can't do 10, because and we have this long list of reasons why something won't work. But you've built a business around finding out ways to make the things that we say won't work. So I have a question for you. Where does that extra little bit of courage comes from? Because starting any type of business is a challenge, and that's when the customers are obvious. You are catering towards a higher end clientele. You're catering towards the fears, hopes, and dreams of others. So being able to find that customer, it's like, wow, are there enough potential customers out there for such a specialized business? Which says to me, Steve, you got a special kind of courage going on, and I want to know where that comes from.
Oh, wow. That's a fantastic question. I'll tell you, buddy, no one's ever asked me that question before. I don't think I had much courage. I think I had heaps of stupidity. And
okay, please explain.
Yeah, I think there were so many times when I would go and do something, and then someone would turn around and go, how did you do that? And they will put it on a pedestal. And people do that. They go, I want to meet Elon Musk. And again, it's the but thing. But he's so there and I can't do it. And they put these objects of desire. They put these people they want to meet. They put these red carpets they want to walk. They put them on a pedestal. And all of a sudden that pedestal gets higher and higher and higher. And it just keeps pushing it out of their own reach. I never saw that. And like I had a client a couple of years ago wanting to get married in the Vatican by the Pope. And as far as I was concerned, the Vatican was a massive location, yes. But at the end of the day, it's a venue. If I said to you, I got someone married in a venue, you're no longer in awe of that. You're no longer glamorizing that. That's no longer out of your reach. If I said to you, I did it in your local church hall, you'll be like, oh, great, congratulations on the couple. Call it the Vatican, and all of a sudden everyone gets deer in headlights and gets terrified. I always broke it down, and everyone says, how do you eat an elephant? Inch by inch. That's what I do. I look at it and I go, well, okay, you want a piano lesson with Elton John? Great. Okay. First thing is, you need a piano. So just break it down to the smallest element and simplify it. Without the paralysis by analysis aspect. So I think right in my early stages, I never had the education. I was ignorant to this fear. I was very questionable. Why can't it happen? And I was very keen, and I mentioned this in the beginning of the statement, I couldn't understand or acknowledge why people would put so much effort into coming up with really spectacular reasons for it not to happen, as opposed to the reason why it must happen. And that was a mindset that I think I had before I realized how powerful it was for me.
Yeah, exactly. I can see how that can play to your advantage. So let me ask you this question then. Today, when you talk to your clients or just look at the human population in general, I would imagine that you see a number of individuals that just put unnecessary boundaries and limits on themselves. What would you say to that person who's listening right now that is wanting to do something, but is looking for that ability to do it, but has that long list of why it can't be done?
Well, here's where it gets tough. I love the fact that people have those fears because, as I say, if they didn't have the fears, I would be out of a job.
Right.
So I like the fact that you're all terrified to actually do anything. But the book's called The Art of Making Things Happen rather than sit on your ass and it will come to you.
Right.
There is a strategy and a structure of what you need to do. And the first thing you need to do is basically get out of the way of yourself. Most people actually love sitting in a rut. They hate the rut, but it's familiar to them. And Joe Polish said to me ages ago, he said, you got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I really love it. I get a lot of my education from little quips. So I love these little slogans I hear. And I remember that one. And I love being uncomfortable. I actually adore it. And I've got so comfortable with it. And I also know as human beings, we are scared of certain things. Certain things terrify us. What I made sure of is I made sure to recognize my fear and translate it into another area. I'm not fearful of trying something amazing. I'm fearful of not trying. I'm fearful of this time next week being in the exact same position I am today. No growth, no attempt, no trying something, no experiencing, no tasting something, to have wasted an entire week of zero growth. That's what I'm terrified of. And if you suddenly become frightened of that, that's when you're going to get somewhere. Because I've noticed a lot of people won't run as fast to something as they will running away from something.
Yeah. And I get that.
Do you know, I've never actually ever said that. That was deep. When this goes down, I'm going to write that down.
This is good, but that's what I'm talking about, is that there's a deeper level of understanding simply because of what you do. Yes, I get the competitive advantage or the fact that your business exists because we're afraid, but all businesses exist because there's a problem that the customer has and hasn't figured out how to solve. So which kind of leads me to, why would you take the time to write a book and tell us how to make stuff happen?
So for many years, we're in about 23 years of doing this concierge and wish fulfillment stuff. We got called by Forbes the real life Wizard of Oz. Basically, if you can dream it and afford it, we make it happen. I have done tons of TV, radio, speeches on the world of luxury. And many, many times I've been approached and like, oh, you should write a book and, tell us about the A-list celebrities you deal with and the rich and famous and the people that own countries that you deal with. If I wrote a book on any of those clients, I'd be dead by cocktail hour. And in none of my media do I ever mention the clients' names. I mention the experiences, never mention the clients' names. So this was always a no-starter for me. Something happened in about 2007, between 2007 and 2009, where a lot of people started approaching me going, hey, I want you on this stage. I want you on this TV show. I want you on this podcast. But can you do me a favor? I don't want you to talk about what you did at the Academy or what you did with Ferrari at Monaco. I want you to talk about how you made that connection. How did you do X? And all of a sudden, I started speaking to a lot more entrepreneurial groups and then realized that 99% of my clients were actually entrepreneurs. So without realizing it, I was talking to like-minded individuals already. And then it was a couple of years ago, maybe four or 5 years ago, Jason Gaynard had me up on stage in Mastermind Talks, that brilliant thing in Canada. And I spoke on stage about, how I communicate with people by handwritten notes and using hotel stationery. And then after that, I met up with Tucker Max, who said, we got to get you in front of someone about doing a book. And I said at the time, I don't want to do one on luxury and hotels and, travel and experience. He went, no. This needs to be a dummy's guide to doing something, a unscientific, non-rocket science, basic, primitive. How do you do this? What are the steps? So he actually introduced me to someone, and then quite shock horror, they introduced me to Simon Schuster, who bit my arm off and said, let's do it. So I'm now sat with one of the biggest publishing houses in America, North Star Simon Schuster, And Michelle Martin, good girl, appreciate it, thank you, backed it. And we went about writing a book that would give you a few of the little kind of like cocktail stories of how we did something. But more importantly, breaking it down into a playbook of this is what we did with this. You can actually use the exact same steps in branding your plumbing company, or trying to get a relationship or a job, or try to reach out to a celebrity, or how to establish better ROI on relationships, how to communicate. I really rant about communication because we have so much technology now that people think teaches us how to communicate. It doesn't. It just dilutes. It's like putting water in a gas tank. You are diluting your ability to build a relationship by the inefficient means in which you communicate with each other today. And I put a book together so that if I phone up the Vatican, if I phone up Elton John's crew, if I phone up, Formula One, they take my call because I've established the relationships. And I felt it was time that I tried to give to others what I did. And so I don't want to kind of like sound as though I'm kind of like riding around on a floating carpet, but I really wanted to see how much of my experience I could actually put out there to show people, look, if a thick ass lump of an Irish bricklayer can do this, you're out of excuses already.
Totally understood. But really quickly, if I wanted to go float on a carpet, you could make that happen though, right?
Absolutely. You just tell me what color carpet.
So speaking of which, what would you say has been some of the, what are the top three, not necessarily the craziest, but the top three experiences that you've created that you personally enjoyed and went and stepped back and were like, wow, I can't believe I made that happen. Hello there, entrepreneur. This is Jay Massey. I know that if you've ever gone over to the site, cashflowdiary.com, you may have asked yourself, where on earth do you get a domain name from? Especially as you are beginning to build your bigger, better, badder business, you need a web presence. You need the email address. You need a way for people to contact you electronically so that you can stop doing the @gmail.com game. Well, the good folks over at GoDaddy have definitely supplied us with every domain that we have ever used. So what I want you to do is I want you to go over to trygodaddy.com/Cashflow Diary. Again, that's trygodaddy.com/Cashflow Diary, because it's a quick way for you to get set up to capture your domain name the exact way that you want it. They got easy search functions, and most importantly for you is that you'll be up and running today. As I said, once you get started, stay started. Don't let small little obstacles of how to get your own domain name going stop you. So again, go to trygodaddy.com/Cashflow Diary, and let's get back to the rest of the story.
Top three. God, you put me on the spot. I won't waste too much time, so I'll try and. All right, so I've got three. All right. I have a phenomenal relationship with Elton John's crew, and we've partnered every year for the Elton John AIDS Foundation Oscar party in Hollywood. This gives me a great chance to just walk the white carpet. They have a white carpet, not a red carpet. Gives me the chance to walk the white carpet with fantastic people, celebrities, A-list, and also a bunch of Bluefish clients. So I love being part of that. Every year I go to that Oscar party, and I can't believe I'm walking down the carpet with Elton John and Steven Tyler and all these people. It just mind-boggling. I'm still that Irish kid from London on a motorcycle. So I've never grown up on there. One of the ones, so that's a relationship I really cherish. I'm trying to give you three different categories of answers. An experience that I put together which still wakes me up in cold sweat was when a client of mine asked to have a dinner in Florence. So we actually took over the Accademia. And for anyone that doesn't know, the Accademia is the museum in Florence that houses Michelangelo's David, the most famous statue in the world. And we kicked everyone out and set up a dinner party for 6 people, him, his girlfriend, mum and dad, and a friend and his wife. 6 people had dinner at the feet of Michelangelo's David in a museum that was completely empty at about 9:30 at night. And then during the dinner, I had Andrea Bocelli come in and serenade them.
What?
So, yeah, that was kind of cool. So I did that. That was one that still wakes me up. Just being able to walk around a museum at midnight
Right.
It's just phenomenal. I'll tell you a funny story quickly. As we're on the front of the academia are these two massive wooden doors, and there's these brass plaques in different languages. Now, I'm on the front door as the catering staff are coming in. They're loading a piano in. We've got a string quartet lining up, all the catering staff and the table and the chandeliers and the flowers. It's all coming through, and I'm stood with the security, and I turned around to them, and I'm looking at this all these plaques, and I'm thinking, I wonder what they say, because they're all in different languages. So I said to the guy, I said, I see all these really old plaques. What are they saying? The guy looks at me, and I won't try and impersonate an Italian language for fear of death, but the guy looks at me and he said, they all say the same. And I said, what's that then? Thinking it's going to be like, the home of Michelangelo's David or something like that. And he said, no food and drink in the academia. And every single one of them said the exact same thing in a different language. And there's us loading in with all this food. And I just roared. So that made me giggle. That was obviously a big, expensive, over-the-top thing. But I have to finish on one that still makes me cry. And thankfully, this is not on video, so you can't see a grown man cry. I've got a client that's been married for many years. He's been a client of ours for about 12 of those years. And he contacted me a few years back to celebrate his 20th. And every year he had done something magical, fantastical, and quite openly expensive. One year he actually asked me, could we do something wonderful, brilliant, impactful? It was that last word that changed the tangent of where we needed to go. We actually went back in time to the first time they met and recreated the first picnic that he had set up for her, including an exact copy of his mum's picnic blanket and a boombox that Run DMC would have been proud of. Now, we had to buy 3 of those boomboxes to be able to find one that actually worked.
Right.
So it was really cheap. Bear in mind, this guy spent 50, 100. I think the most expensive was like about 400 and something grand, for a weekend. And there's this picnic we put together where the only thing that was expensive were these boom boxes. Now, his wife got out of the car when they were driven through the park. He was sitting on the park and rekindling the first time they met. He actually had a glass of champagne as she was walking through the college campus, and he went, care to join me? He reenacted that, and she fell apart. She flooded with tears that he had the detail just perfectly done. And it just hit me then that they had spent millions of dollars celebrating past anniversaries. This one was just over $1,000 because of the boom boxes. And this was the one that drew her to tears.
Yeah, I get that. And for those of you listening, a boombox is what we had before iPhone, before the iPod, before the CD player. But it's old technology. Just know it's pretty good.
It's the suitcase with speakers you had on your shoulders as you trundled down the road in your Adidas sweatsuit.
Yeah, absolutely. And the louder the better. And that's just the way it was. So, it is what it is. So I'm kind of actually curious of 2 parts. What is like an experience that you've thought of and you're like, man, I would like to go do this. Like what's something in that category?
23 years later, I don't have any. As a kid growing up, I always wanted to go to like the Monaco Grand Prix, or I wanted to go, red carpet in a celebrity thing. And you have all these kind of things, When I was a kid in London, I wore jeans, black T-shirt, and rode around on motorcycles. I'm 51 years old now. I live in Los Angeles. I don't own a car. I'm stood here in my garage, surrounded by motorcycles with a black T-shirt on jeans. So I've never really changed. The quality of my bike is better now. I'll appreciate that. But I'm actually an incredibly dull person. If it wasn't for my clients, I wouldn't do half of the things that I do, because I like to barbecue. I adopt dogs, too many of them. I got 3 kids. I like some of them. So I don't do a lot. But what I do like, that I get to live vicariously through, is when I get someone contact me that goes, hey, I really want to do this. in Poland. I really want to do this in Ginza, Japan. Oh, I'd really like to do this in Malaysia. Could you fly over Tuesday and we'll talk about it? That's when you go, hell yeah, why not? So, and I really enjoy that life. So I get to live other people's dreams. And I tell you, there's no better drug of choice than watching someone's passion just absolutely, I won't say explode, but implode. They just can't contain themselves.
You know, as you were talking, I was sitting here thinking, I was like, I bet you this ceased being about the money for you a long time ago and is more about, it sounds, I hear mission when you speak. I hear, making a difference, or the word was impact, and those types of things is what I hear underneath. That's the subtext when you are talking. And I'm curious to know, when it comes to running a business as like yours, how important is the concept of mission?
Mission's everything. The first time you screw it up is when you start looking at it as a money maker. And like all entrepreneurs, I didn't start this company. The client started this company. There was a need and desire and no one was fulfilling it. And I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. And so it grew. And the Bluefish actually came from when I started throwing kind of like cool parties. I had people turn up, and I always used to have a password because I wanted people that were open for a laugh. I didn't want any kind of like trust fund, a-holes. And so, I would send someone the location. I would give them a password, and I would say things like, name 2 of the Teletubbies, or finish this sentence, 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish. So I would have people that owned, countries come up to the door and go, Bluefish. And we would let them in. And that's how it started. The second that it started doing really well, I screwed it up. I tried to rename the brand with something prestigious. I actually tried doing a flashy business card. No one wanted it. While I kept it primitive and impossible to misunderstand, that's when people wanted it. So the whole concept of that grew. And then as soon as I started going, okay, we need to make money on this and we need to do this and we better do it. Again, you screw it up because as entrepreneurs, we tend to get good at something and then just seem to mandatorily F it up. So I very quickly realized that there were a number of things. And you talk about superhumans, and I really like that you used that at the beginning, because Spider-Man can't fly. Spider-Man doesn't have a utility belt. Spider-Man does what Spidey does, okay? Every superhero is good at 5%. They're good at something that the other ones are not. And I'm a great believer that we're all looking, or should be on our eternal hunt for our 5%. I found my 5%. I make things happen. If you look at Elon Musk and Richard Branson, I could beat those guys on motorcycles. I can beat those guys at basketball, but that's not their 5%. They found their 5% and they excel at it. And I realized that I couldn't do accounting. I couldn't do invoicing. I couldn't do infrastructure. So what do? You employ people that can. So it gives you more time in the day to work on your 5%. And when you suddenly eradicate all of those things that you don't want to do, or that someone else can do just as good or better, and that you paid them to do it, and with outsourcing now, it's so cheap. Fiverr, I'm on Fiverr more times than I'm clicking through a TV channel. I have Fiverr do so much of my work. And I outsource absolutely anything I can. That's when you can actually really drag it down to, okay, what is your core? And again, you hit it on the head. I believe I have a mission to make it happen.
Yeah, I can hear it. It's just interesting to me how it comes about, because I know when sitting around going, hey, what's a great business idea? The idea of, I'm going to build a business around making the impossible things, or the things people perceive to be impossible, happen. That does not just come up in natural conversation. So I just like it.
A lot of if they don't know, like my website doesn't have a phone number. And you talk about referral business. There should be a picture of me when you search referral business, because I get all of my clients that come to me going, "Hey, I heard you did this for Johnny, or I heard you did this for Bernie. I need this." So all of my stuff comes through that. If I'm in an event or I'm in a location where nobody knows who I am, and again, I'm a very quiet guy, so I'm not the networker. I never carry business cards. I don't run around shaking hands. If people come up to me and they go, hey, what do you do? I don't know how to answer them. And so quite often I will say, I'm a plumber. Oh, I have a direct TV franchise. I will just throw them completely off the curve because the couple of times I've gone, oh, have you ever wanted to go and see the Titanic or go, to the red carpet Oscar parties or maybe sing on stage with your favorite rock band? That's what I do. And they look at you and they go, yeah, mate, sure you do. And they move on. So they'd much easier believe that I was a plumber than what I do.
That's, what's really funny about that is that I suffer from the same disease, so to speak. And I often just tell people I work at Starbucks because I often sit at Starbucks and actually do work there, but they assume I work at Starbucks, which is pretty cool. With that being said, though, I am curious about something. The name of the company, Bluefish. Help me understand. Is there a story there? Did you?
Yeah, and I've actually already given it to you.
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking that it had something to do with that, and I was like, but maybe it doesn't. I don't know.
No, we used to have about 3, because back in the 90s, way before websites, we used to send people faxes of where the party was going to be.
Yes.
And we used to send this fax out, and we used to tell them at the bottom, name 2 of the Teletubbies. You know the toughest one? And again, this was pre-Google or anything. Name the lion out of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Aslan?
Oh, well done. I would have so many people come up to the door, and I used to be on the doorman, being the big guy I am. People would come up to me, and they'd be like, I don't know. Is it Robert? And, because they were so much up for a laugh, and they never had their head up their backside, we'd be like, you're wrong. But you're in, have a good night. And it was that kind of thing. So for us, that password thing was just a little filter. We would get people turn up at a party and go, I'm here for the party.
Yeah.
No party here, man. And I would just look at my fellow meathead and I'd be like, hey, John, do you know if there's a party? No, I don't think so. Of course, there's a crowd of people behind him. Music's going like, and we would just blank the guy. And then the next guy would come up to us and go, Tinky Winky Po. And we'd say, in you go, buddy. And so when we were doing this, the first time it happened, I was actually called into a bank. Believe it or not, I actually thought this bank was going to give me a job. So I got this phone call, and the manager of the bank wanted me to come in. And I'm thinking, yeah, I'm going to be a stockbroker after all. This is great. This is wonderful. And I went in there, and he sat me down. He got me coffee, and he went, we have a client. She was a princess. She went to the party the other day, and she would like Bluefish to handle one of her parties. And I was sat there, and I was like, oh, that's great. And I was sat there thinking to myself, who the bloody hell is Bluefish? And so I'm still sat there thinking he's going to tell me about this job.
Right.
And then he went, so are you going to contact her? And I went, me? What? Why me? And he went, you own Bluefish, don't you? And I went, no. He went, she went to a couple of parties and she said it was a Bluefish party. And it suddenly dawned on me that people... So when we realized that people were actually starting to talk about it, that's when we went out and tried to rename the company, set it up, and we had this ostentatious name, and we had this girl answering the phone and stuff, and people would answer the phone, and she would say, and they would go, oh, is that Bluefish company? And the lady would be like, oh, no, we are called Trianon. And they'd be like, no, we're looking for Bluefish, and hang up. So it was about 6 months later that we dumped that company and just went back to being Bluefish. And that's how the thing came out. And that was the beauty, because Bluefish... And again, this goes back to the uneducated element. If you launch a company, you will spend weeks, months, maybe even a year thinking of the title. We now had a title that meant nothing. If you think of luxury lifestyle concierge, real life Wizard of Oz, you don't think of calling it a fish.
Yeah, not a blue one anyway.
No, exactly. So the whole point was that we were able to actually bring a meaning to something that didn't have a meaning.
What's really interesting about that is it's almost just understanding that a lot of the answers that we as entrepreneurs are searching for, our customers have them if we're only listening. And the fact that you listened, I get the fact that let's go do it right is probably what you were thinking. And then you're like, hey, but you still knew enough to listen to what your customer had to say, and you pivoted back towards that. So, and I think that's great. So, really quickly, I'm curious to know, for those of you, for those that have listened this far, what would you know, because here's what I know. There's a number of people listening right now that are like, man, I want to know more about what he's doing, what's going on, how can I get in contact with him, maybe even pick up a copy of the book. What's going to be the best way for them to track you down?
I've got a website, Steve D. Sims, that's SIMS.com. That's got a bunch of stuff on my bio background. I've also got a bunch of podcasts. This one will be on there, videos, and it also talks to you about my book on there as well.
Got it. Perfect. So as we end up here, I have a question for you because I'm really want to hear the answer. Let's pretend for a moment that someone listening, they're standing at what I like to call the precipice of the decision. That maybe they're even in front of the superhero outfit store, and Steve, they're going, I'm going to put on that entrepreneur outfit. I'm going to pick out my cape and tights. I'm going to do this thing. And you know this to be very, very true. At those moments, there's often a companion with us, and that companion comes in the form of a voice. And that voice often reminds us of why we can't do it, how it won't work, who are we to think that we could ask for such a thing. And for some people, they're even related to that voice. So my question to you is as follows. Let's pretend this time they're actually going to do it. And not only are they going to do it, they're going to take action within the next 24 to 48 hours and because they want to proceed towards making it happen. So my question to you is, what would you suggest that they do?
Wow, that's a big lead up to a question. So I think I need to refine that question. What would I suggest they need to do to what? Do their goal?
To begin making things happen, because that's what you do.
So I am okay, so here's a true story. I had a client that wanted to get married in the Vatican. The first thing I did was I phoned my local church because I thought surely a Catholic person's going to know more than me. Now, I'm Catholic, but I thought surely if you go to a church, they're going to give you one step further. I'm a great believer in breaking it down to millimeters. And so if there is something that you want to do, if you have that dream, and you know the whole thing, you've got to know the goalpost, otherwise you're never going to hit it. Now, the goalpost can change the closer you get, but you first of all got to have something in focus to be able to hit it. So the first thing you should do is make sure you do something this second that gets you 1 millimeter closer to your goal and starts that momentum. And the beautiful thing about momentum is that once it starts, it's much easier to keep going. And quite simply, will bowl through anything that gets in your way. So if you've got a dream of owning a florist store, then pick a name out and buy the web domain. If you want to own a consulting business, who do you want to be compared to? And start getting those on in your vision board. If you want to set up a clothing line, go and buy yourself a needle and thread. Do something minute that gets you 1 millimeter closer than you were 10 minutes ago.
Excellent. Well said. I love that, because there's so many times where we can read ourselves into oblivion and keep trying to think about what I'm going to do next, as opposed to actually taking some action steps. And I just want to be the first to say thank you for doing what you do, for making the impossible probable, and more importantly, getting it done. And just knowing that hey, this is my zone. This is what I'm supposed to be out there doing. And I really appreciate you taking the time to share your knowledge, your insight, as well as your wisdom here with us today at the Cashflow Diary, sir.
Cheers, buddy. It's been good. I've had fun. Great questions.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean? That means get over to his website. That means pick up the book. That means do something. And that's what's exciting. Here's the cool thing. One of the most fun things I have ever done, and I believe you can ever do, is to think about those things. Just put yourself in a space and go, you know what? If everything was possible, what would I do? And start writing that down and figure out some of the things that get you excited, and just take 1 millimeter step closer to it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been fun talking to you today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.